The early church used an ancient Jewish word to talk about the significance of this, the punch of this. It was the word gospel, or good news. And that goes back to the book of Isaiah, which talks about God's comforting news for Israel in exile, or the news that God is redeeming Israel by defeating all the evil that has stood against her. This is the great news. God is doing something which is changing everything. Now, interestingly, when the early church used that word, gospel, which goes back to Isaiah, they must have known as well that in the world of their day, the word gospel was what Roman emperors used to talk about their own enthronement or birthday or accession day or whatever. So when they said, the early Christians said, the scriptures are fulfilled and Jesus, the Jewish Messiah, is now the Lord of the world, they knew that this was at the same time an invitation to anyone, anywhere, who was tired of whatever system they'd got and needed release from sin and death and all that was cramping them as human beings. But at the same time, it was a slap in the face for old Caesar on the throne. Because Paul's gospel is not, I have a new religious experience which you might like to try on for size because it might be kind of fun. Alas, a lot of Christians try and water it down into that. Paul's gospel is, Jesus, the crucified Messiah of Israel, is the Lord of the world. And that's why the invitation to believe in the gospel cannot simply be an intellectual, here's a few propositions you might like to believe, nor can it simply be a spiritual, here is a kind of a nice rose bed that you might like to lie on because it'll be soft and pleasant. It is always a challenge to what Paul calls the obedience of faith, because if Jesus is Lord, the summons to believe is the summons to allegiance, and allegiance means a total change in how you live, and a change which is going to be very subversive politically, because as we look out in our world and see, well, Caesar is harder to define in our world, but it is still the case that there are many forces out there that claim our allegiance, but for Paul the gospel is that Jesus is Lord and Caesar isn't. And that gospel grasps my head, my heart, my mind, my soul, my strength, and sends me out to live very differently from how I would otherwise.